Sports tie together the world like few other things in life. As a result of that, when a tragedy strikes in the sports world, it hits more than most tragedies. Here are 10 of the most shocking accidents in sports history. Len Bias. It may be hard to believe, but around the same time Michael Jordan was entering the NBA, there was said to be a basketball player who had talent rivaling his. That man was Len Bias. Bias would never have the chance to show off his skills in the NBA though, as less than 48 hours after he was drafted by the Boston Celtics, tragedy struck. Bias was found dead in his dorm room from a cocaine overdose. He was only 22 years old. 1972 Andes flight disaster. This tragedy has multiple layers of disaster, each one worse than the next. On a plane ride from Santiago, Chile to Montevideo, Uruguay, the Old Christians Club rugby team all crashed into the Andes Mountains. 12 people were killed immediately on impact, while 5 others died shortly after the crash. 8 more were killed by an avalanche days later, and the only survivors of the crash had to eat their dead friends before being rescued 72 days after the accident. That's crazy! Bill Masterson. Born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, Masterson worked long and hard to achieve his dream of reaching the NHL. After playing for the University of Denver and toiling in the minor leagues for years, he was picked up by the upstart Minnesota North Stars. 38 games into his career, Masterson was checked into the boards in a game against the California Seals and hit his head on the ice. He died 2 days after his injury and remains the only NHL player to die during a game. Don Sanderson. Fans enjoy a good fight in hockey every once in a while, but this incident reminds us how dangerous it can really be. During a 2008 Ontario Hockey League game, defenseman Don Sanderson dropped his gloves to fight with forward Corey Fulton. Things took a turn for the worst, however, when Sanderson's helmet came off and he fell on the ice and hit his head. Sanderson went unconscious and then came to, only to fall back into a coma where he was on life support before the plug was pulled in January 2009. Raymond Chapman. Almost 100 years ago in 1920, Cleveland Indians shortstop Raymond Chapman took his post in the batter's box opposite Yankees pitcher Carl Mays. Mays threw a pitch that nailed Chapman right in the head and knocked him out. Chapman awoke and tried to walk off the effects of the hit, but he collapsed. He was taken to the hospital where he would die shortly after. This banned the use of the spitball in baseball, but batting helmets would only become mandatory decades later. Owen Hart. We know this may be controversial as pro wrestling isn't a straight sport, but the shocking nature of this accident and the individual involved makes this truly heart-wrenching. At WWE Over the Edge 1999, longtime performer Owen Hart was supposed to make an entrance from the top of the arena via a cable which would have descended him from the rafters. Unfortunately, the cable used wasn't meant to hold a 230-pound man. It was actually used to hold sailboats. The cable snapped and Hart plummeted to the ring. He was later declared dead from internal bleeding at a Kansas City hospital. Roberto Clemente. One of the most beloved MLB players of all time, the Pittsburgh Pirates legend Roberto Clemente already carved out a spectacular legacy for himself before he died in 1972. That didn't soften the blow of his death at all though. Revered for his charity work, Clemente was leaving from Puerto Rico to Nicaragua to help with an earthquake relief effort. The plane crashed, however, and Clemente's body was never found. Clemente died at the age of 38 and was posthumously inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame the following year. Jose Fernandez. The most recent entry on this list, the death of Jose Fernandez still has the baseball world reeling. A star pitcher for the Miami Marlins, Fernandez was loved by many fans and teammates alike for being down to earth and always ready to lend a helping hand to those in need. On September 25th, a boat that Fernandez was riding on with friends crashed into some rocks near the Miami harbor. Fernandez and 2 of his friends were found dead, and baseball was dealt one of its darkest days in recent memory. Marshall University air disaster. In November 1970, a plane carried most of the Marshall University football team from North Carolina to West Virginia. Tragedy struck when the plane hit a row of trees and crashed into the side of a hill. All 75 people on the plane, including the players, coaches, doctors, and anyone else with a hand in the team, were killed. The massacre was so bad that 6 of the players who perished could not be identified and were buried together. 1955 Le Mans disaster. Motorsport accidents are some of the most horrifying things you'll ever see, and this one from 1955 is the worst of all. At the 24 Hours of Le Mans race, British driver Mike Hawthorne abruptly stopped for a pit stop, which caused a 3-car pileup and crash. Car parts went flying into the crowd, where it decapitated and crushed some spectators. Fire from a vehicle also spread into the crowd, and by the end of the disaster, the death toll was somewhere from 80 to 130 people. And that's it for our list. Which sports tragedies hit you the hardest? Tell us in the comments section, and don't forget to like this video, share it, and subscribe to The Sportster.